The arena was electric. The kind of energy that didn't just hum but roared, filling every inch of the space with anticipation. Two men stood at the center of it all, two legends, two warriors, two of the most feared fighters to ever step inside a ring or cage. One, a boxer whose name alone sent chills down spines. The other, a champion who had dominated the world of mixed martial arts with skill and power. Mike Tyson, Daniel Cormier. Two titans set on a collision course that few had ever dared to imagine. The fight world had always thrived on dream matchups, the kind of battles whispered about in gyms, debated in smoky bars, and theorized over in late-night discussions among fans. What if Tyson, the most devastating heavyweight boxer of his era, faced a man like Cormier, whose wrestling and striking had brought him championship gold in two weight classes? It was the kind of fight that seemed impossible. Two men from different combat disciplines, two different worlds. But sometimes, impossibilities had a way of becoming reality. For Tyson, the ring was his kingdom. He didn't just fight, he destroyed. His opponents didn't just lose, they fell, often within minutes, victims of a force so raw, so unrelenting, that even those who had never watched boxing knew his name. But Tyson wasn't just a puncher, he was a predator, a master of movement, a storm of controlled violence wrapped in the frame of a heavyweight who fought like a lightweight. He had spent his life proving that power alone wasn't enough. It was about timing, precision, and the kind of fear that settled into a man's bones before the first bell even rang. Then there was Cormier, a man who had built his legacy in cages, not rings. Where Tyson had grown up learning to slip punches and deliver devastating counters, Cormier had spent years perfecting takedowns, controlling opponents, and breaking their will. He had fought and beaten some of the greatest fighters in the history of MMA. He had stood against giants, traded blows with knockout artists, and walked through fire to claim his place among the best. His wrestling was relentless, his ground game suffocating. And though he wasn't known for one-punch knockouts like Tyson, he had something just as dangerous: an ability to adapt, to find an opponent's weakness, and to exploit it until they had nothing left to give. So when the announcement was made, when the world found out that Mike Tyson and Daniel Cormier were going to fight, the reaction was immediate. Shock, excitement, skepticism. Could Tyson, a man who had ruled boxing, stand against someone who could take him down in seconds? Could Cormier survive the kind of power that had made Tyson a legend? The arguments raged on, experts weighed in, and the fight world was divided. Some said it wouldn't be a contest, that Cormier's wrestling would nullify Tyson's striking before the fight even had a chance to begin. Others believed that Tyson's explosiveness was unlike anything Cormier had ever faced, that one clean shot would end it all. But the thing about fights like this, the thing about legends, was that predictions meant nothing once the first punch was thrown. And when fight night arrived, when Tyson and Cormier stood across from each other, the weight of history pressing down on both men, there was only one truth that mattered: neither of them had come to lose. The crowd's roar was deafening as the referee gave the final instructions. Tyson, his frame coiled with energy, stared straight through Cormier, his eyes burning with the same fire that had made him the most feared man in boxing. Cormier, calm but focused, knew that this fight wouldn't be like anything he had experienced before. He had fought powerful men, dangerous strikers, but none of them were Mike Tyson. The bell rang. Tyson exploded forward. And in that instant, the world held its breath. Tyson moved like a missile, his footwork deceptively smooth, his fists already primed to unleash the kind of destruction only he could deliver. Cormier, expecting the charge, shifted his stance, hands up, weight balanced, ready to react. But before he could set his rhythm, Tyson struck a lightning-fast left hook, not full power, but enough to test the waters, to remind Cormier that he wasn't dealing with an ordinary puncher. The glove clipped his guard, the impact vibrating through his arms, a brief taste of what would happen if one of those shots landed clean. Cormier didn't retreat. That wasn't who he was. He leaned in slightly, feinted a jab, then dropped low for the takedown. It was what everyone expected the moment he would drag Tyson into his world. But Tyson wasn't there. He had already sidestepped, already launched a right uppercut toward the spot where Cormier's head had just been. The crowd gasped, realizing what had almost happened. Had Cormier shot in a fraction of a second later, the fight might have ended right then. But he adjusted fast. He knew Tyson would be hunting for openings, looking for any mistake to capitalize on. He feinted again, forcing Tyson to react, then stepped in with a short right hand. It wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to smother. Tyson's back heel shifted, a subtle move, but enough for Cormier to grab him. The clinch. His world. The moment his arms wrapped around Tyson's torso, he tightened his grip, ready to muscle him toward the cage. But something was wrong. Tyson wasn't panicking. He wasn't trying to break free. He was waiting. And then Cormier felt it, a shift in weight, a sudden explosion of movement. Tyson twisted, using the momentum to wrench himself free, then shoved Cormier off balance with surprising strength. Cormier stumbled back, caught himself, but before he could react, Tyson was on him. A body shot, brutal and compact, slammed into his ribs, the kind of punch that had folded heavyweights in half. Cormier absorbed it, but he felt it. Another came, this one just as precise, just as devastating. He had trained for this, prepared for the storm, but knowing about Tyson's power and feeling it were two very different things. Still, he wasn't out of options. He forced a clinch again, but this time, he didn't go for control. He whispered something to Tyson, no one knew what, but whatever it was, it made the boxer smile. A dangerous smile. The kind that came right before something unexpected. Cormier was strong, but Tyson had spent his entire career fighting men who wanted to hold him, tie him up, wear him down. And he had learned how to turn those moments into traps. As Cormier adjusted his grip, Tyson launched a short, compact right hook, one that barely needed space, one that landed flush against Cormier's temple. For a brief second, the world slowed. Cormier's legs buckled, his balance wavering. The crowd saw it. Tyson saw it. And for the first time, the possibility flickered in everyone's mind. Was this it? Had Tyson found the opening he needed? But Cormier wasn't done. Not yet. And what happened next wasn't what anyone expected. Cormier's body wavered, his vision blurring for the briefest moment, but instinct took over before his mind could register the danger. Instead of stepping back, instead of giving Tyson space to unleash another shot, he surged forward, wrapping his arms around the boxer's waist in a desperate, calculated move. His head pressed against Tyson's chest, his grip ironclad. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. This was survival. Tyson tensed, his fists still cocked, his muscle memory screaming to throw another punch. But before he could reset his stance, Cormier lifted. It wasn't clean, it wasn't pretty, but it was effective. Tyson's feet left the ground for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Cormier to twist and drive him downward. The impact rattled the canvas, sending a shockwave through the crowd. Tyson landed hard, his back smacking against the mat, and for the first time, real danger crept into his eyes. Cormier had him where he wanted him. He wasted no time, shifting his weight, pressing his chest against Tyson's, pinning him down. This was his world now. The arena was in chaos. Fans screamed, some urging Tyson to fight his way out, others yelling for Cormier to finish it. But neither man heard them. It was just the two of them now, locked in battle, each trying to impose his will on the other. Tyson bucked, twisting his hips, but Cormier stayed heavy, pressing his forearm against Tyson's throat, not to choke him, but to drain his energy, to remind him who controlled this moment.
Tyson gritted his teeth. He had fought through wars in the ring, had stood against men who tried to break him, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight, it was a test, a clash of two worlds. He had one chance. He planted his feet, coiled his body, and exploded. Cormier felt it coming a second too late. Tyson's raw power surged beneath him, and suddenly, the boxer wasn't trapped anymore. He twisted hard, managing to shift just enough to throw a hook from the ground. It wasn't full force, but it clipped Cormier's jaw, making his grip falter for just a second. And that was all Tyson needed. A scramble. A moment of chaos. And suddenly, they were both on their feet again, breathing hard, eyes locked. Cormier's jaw throbbed, Tyson's back ached, but neither man backed down. They stepped forward at the same time, Cormier throwing a looping right, Tyson uncorking a left hook. Both landed. Both stumbled. And then, like two warriors who had pushed themselves beyond their limits, they froze. The referee stepped in. The fight was over. Not by knockout, not by submission, but by sheer exhaustion. The crowd erupted, torn between cheers and disbelief. There was no winner tonight, only respect. Tyson wiped the sweat from his face, looked at Cormier, and smirked. Cormier, still catching his breath, nodded back. No words were needed. They had both proven something. And in that moment, it didn't matter who came from boxing or who came from MMA. All that mattered was the fight and the fact that neither man had broken. As they embraced in the center of the ring, the world knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. Not just a fight, but a battle of wills. Two legends, standing tall, forever linked by the war they had just waged.